Thank you very much. In the United States, there are opportunities in early care and education like I have never seen before. And there are a number of reasons for this, some converging influences. Recent research on early brain development has certainly shown us that early experience is even more important than we thought it was for the actual structural development of the brain and for children's capabilities that are going to have throughout their lives. So that's one influence. Another influence is from very elegant analyses by economists that show us that early investments in high-quality early childhood education pay many benefits, many dividends throughout children's lives to not only individuals but to the society at large. Another opportunity really comes about because of the Obama administration in the United States. And you may have heard in the news a lot about all the political conflict that has been certainly visible during the Obama administration. But one thing you may not have heard about is the tremendous emphasis that the Obama administration has put on early childhood education and care. For example, in the last 3 or 4 years, there has been nearly $1 billion of new funding for early childhood education in the United States. This is unprecedented in our country. We haven't really made those kinds of national investments in young children in many years. So this is creating a lot of new opportunities. Through grants to individual states, the federal government is promoting the development, quality improvement of early childhood systems, and most importantly, the integration of different sectors that serve children into a more coordinated effort through collaboration, through funding, joint funding, and really through making people work together. And so this has come from the federal government, and this is new in the United States. So a lot of things are encouraging. I almost fell over in a faint the other day when I got a tweet from the governor of my very politically conservative state that said, "I believe the time has come for Indiana," that's my state, "to allow access to pre-kindergarten education for all the children in our state." Now, this is a guy who is very much a fiscal conservative and a social conservative and a political conservative. So it just gives you an indication of how things have changed. Even in this time of great political strife in the United States, people from different sides of the political spectrum are coming together to talk about the importance and the need for investments in early childhood education and care. Another thing that I want to mention today, and that's along these lines of integration of services. For the first time in 40 years, I'm seeing finally the breakdown of this artificial separation between care and education. The question is, what's the quality of the education and care? Another striking development in the United States is the development of quality rating and improvement systems for childcare. And you can see here a depiction of the Indiana quality rating system for childcare. The system was designed with the idea that you could start at the entry level, which is basic state licensing and emphasizing health and safety primarily, and specifying group sizes, and then gradually, step by step, work your way up to the highest quality level, which in our country would be national accreditation by the Professional Early Childhood Organization, which would be the highest measurable quality that we have at the current time, but steps in between. The systems provide information for parents, so easy to understand information about how quality can vary. They provide incentives for child care providers to come into this voluntary system and work their way up in the levels, quality standards, independent rating, objective rating of whether providers are meeting the quality standards, whether they qualify for the next level. And then also a lot of training and technical assistance for the providers to help them improve quality and meet their goals. I mentioned that there, in addition to tremendous opportunities, there are also risks that I can see at this time. And I want to talk about some of them too, because I think these are things we have to deal with and watch out for, and some of these may be familiar in your context as well. One risk, I think, is focusing too much on measurable outcomes in early childhood education and care. We sometimes forget that childcare is where children live. They spend many hours every day and every week in childcare. So most of all, I think we need to create an environment, a nurturing environment that's interesting and that's comfortable and where children want to be and can thrive, okay? So that's kind of a holistic goal. If we focus too much on discrete developmental outcomes or school readiness, I think sometimes that can take away from the larger picture of what we should be looking at. And I'll talk today about a concern I have about the loss of play, time to play, and emphasis on play in early care and education. Another challenge, I think, another risk, has to do with overemphasizing assessment and accountability. This is something we're very big on in the United States, is accountability. So consequently, we're doing a lot of testing of children in the primary grades, achievement testing to see if they're meeting the educational standards. And this is starting to work its way into early childhood, which I have some real concerns about, not because I don't think we shouldn't be accountable. We do need to be accountable for the resources that we use, and we do need to be accountable to children and families, but because I think sometimes we're using inappropriate methods of instruction and evaluation with children who are very young. And so I do think there are more appropriate ways to do assessment. A fourth challenge or risk, I think, is that we have to recognize that when we do research on early education and care, there are limitations to what the research can do. Our measures are not so precise all the time. There's a lot of measurement error involved, and any of you who have worked in research understand this. So that the danger is that sometimes when we don't find positive effects using the research measures, we conclude that the program doesn't work for children. And that's a mistaken conclusion. It may be that we just didn't do the research well enough, we didn't measure the right things, or we didn't measure them in a good way. So we have to be on guard, and I'm sure that you as consumers of research and researchers yourselves are aware of this, but you have to be critical about research results. Certainly celebrate them when it shows that your programs are doing well, but also question them when it shows no effects. So I think it's a good time to, given this kind of great opportunities and also some significant challenges, how do we navigate in the United States? How do we navigate our way through and make progress in the field? And I think it's a good time to reflect on what our goals are. What are our most important goals? And this, at the end of this large project, this is an appropriate time for you to be thinking about, taking a step back and thinking about, what do we really want to do? What do we want the results to be of early childhood education and care? One perspective that I have been reading lately that I like, and I won't say a lot about this, but you might want to check it out, is Ellen Galinsky's book called Mind in the Making, a book that was published in 2010. Where she lays out what she says are 7 essential life skills that parents and early childhood teachers should consider as they plan how to interact with their children and how to use their children's time. But these include things like executive function skills, self-control, focusing, perspective taking, communicating with others, making creative connections in their play and in their work, critical thinking, and being willing to take on challenges, do new things, and engage in learning as a self-directed learner. So that's a broader perspective than we sometimes take on child outcomes, I think, at least in the United States. And I think you could even think of other kinds of goals that we might have for children. But I think this is a good one to consider as a starting point. So as we reflect and consider the future directions of early care and education, I hope that we won't forget about play. We have known, I think those of us who have been in the early childhood field have known for many years that play is an essential part of young children's lives. It's a universal, all children all over the world play, many social animals play. It's an important part of what makes life good for children. And they learn so much while they play. The learning potential of play is so great. Play is active, it's creative, it's self-affirming because you have control over what you're doing. It's rewarding, it reduces stress, it's constructive, and it can be very social as well. So it really brings a lot of those developing skills together for kids. The great challenge is, with these pressures to produce outcomes that are related to school skills, how do we keep play in the early childhood curriculum? And how do we help teachers understand all of the values of play and how to optimize the opportunities that children have while they're playing for learning without interfering with the play and taking over? That's the challenge. The interactions that happen between adults and children in early childhood settings, I think all of us are beginning to realize are really the key to quality. And so I'll talk a bit today about interaction quality. And I want to point out, this is some research that I've done on the quality rating system in Indiana, where I live, over the past several years. And especially as we look at these subscales that look at interaction, that's a key area where we need improvement. And I know with the Vversterk project, this has been a focus on paying more attention to the quality of interaction and helping professionals up their game in terms of the quality of their interactions. Now, in the Netherlands, you've had similar results with the same measures in national studies of quality. So this pattern of results using the same measures looks similar in the Netherlands as it does in the United States. And these are data from 2012 that I just got from Professor Louis Tavecchio, and were just published this last summer. But this shows that while quality actually in the last couple of years is improving in the Netherlands, and maybe some of the people in this room can take credit for that, there's still room for improvement, especially in all areas, but especially in these interaction areas: language, learning activities, and quality interactions. I want to mention just briefly a measure of quality interactions that's used widely in the United States and has very good research support, and that's the CLASS. It's called the Classroom Assessment Learning System from the University of Virginia, Bob Pianta and others. And this has really been widely adopted by both researchers and program developers in the United States as a tool to use for improving quality. And I just want to point out that the main domains of this measure are emotional support in the interactions between adults and children, classroom organization, which includes things like behavior management, guidance, limit setting, and also productivity in terms of how well you're using the time during the day. And then the really important one in terms of relationships of children's outcomes is called instructional support, and this sounds very school-like, but really what it is helping children develop concepts through interaction, asking the kinds of questions that provoke them to think, for example, the quality of feedback that the adult gives the child when they make a statement or do something, and the language modeling that goes on. I've had the opportunity to work with some of your some of your Dutch researchers on a measure that I think is very promising that's been developed here in the Netherlands called the Caregiver Interaction Profile. And I know some of you are familiar with this. But this has also dimensions that are similar to the class, I think. But in some ways, I like this measure better than the class because it's a little bit more straightforward. The structure of it is a little simpler, so I think it may be more useful as a tool in early care and education. It has a broader age range, and the dimensions that are looked at, sensitive responsiveness, respect for children's autonomy, structuring and limit setting, verbal communication, developmental stimulation, and are all represented in the class as well. But the unique feature, I think, is the dimension of fostering peer interactions, and that's an important one that the class does not emphasize very much. I want to mention here Karen Vversterk, who's with SARDES, and she came to Purdue University with her family. Her husband had a sabbatical there this past year, and so we were lucky enough to get to know Karen and have her work as a part of our research group on this particular project, and she contributed a whole lot. So thank you, Karen, for your contributions to this work. Another area that I think is exciting and expanding in my work is the emphasis on STEM. We have emphasized literacy and language a lot for the past 10 years in early childhood in the United States, and now there's an increasing awareness of the importance of introducing children to some of these technological subjects as well, and that, in fact, in children's play, they do many things that can be viewed as science or engineering. And all we have to do is recognize that and support those kinds of processes and give kids concepts and labels to communicate about them and think of them in that way. In my teaching about science methods with teacher education students, I emphasize not the facts of science, but the process and the discovery, the process of science, which is the really important part of science, is kind of how you learn systematically how you do things. And that's what we emphasize, and the experiential part of science and engineering, I think, is what we need to emphasize in early childhood education. I mentioned that we were talking with our engineering colleagues about how does engineering look when you see it in 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. And all of these things are part of the basic engineering design process. Recognizing problems, deciding that you're going to solve the problem in some way, coming up with design ideas, building things, seeing if they work, problem solving about the buildings, evaluating, explaining to other people how things work or how you want them to work, following patterns or prototypes, making drawings. These are all things that children either do or could do in the context of their constructive play, including using mathematics and logical thinking. And if we introduce them to some of the vocabulary of engineering and science, they can use those words as well and those concepts. We have focused in our work at Purdue on block play. And for a number of reasons. I think block play is a traditional early childhood activity that unfortunately has kind of been disappearing from some early childhood programs in the United States, and I hope that's not the case here. But I want to counteract that trend because I think blocks offer children a lot of opportunities for learning. First and foremost, block play is fun. It's engaging. And children like the sensory experience of working with blocks, and they like to build things. They like to think of things and build them, and they like to pretend with the things that they built. But if you look at block play seriously and closely, you understand that it offers many opportunities for learning, if you recognize them. Math skills, social skills, concepts and verbal abilities, physical abilities, understanding of some principles of physics, creativity, imagination, and, as I said before, engineering, the basic engineering design process. So I think it's really a rich kind of early childhood activity if we take advantage of it. And we've been doing some research with blocks in my university, funded by an organization called Kaboom, which is, and the website address is kaboom.org if you want to check this out. It's there on the screen. And their mission is to make sure that every child in the United States has a great place to play within walking distance. So they've been organizing community groups to build thousands of inner city playgrounds in the United States for the past 15 years or so. But they also are promoting these big blue blocks that you can see in the picture here. And I want to show you just a short film from our laboratory at Purdue. We did a study where we actually got some sets of these large blocks. They're lightweight, sturdy, easy to handle, but big. And so children can do large constructions with them, as you can see here. And we think are a really neat kind of play material. So I want to show you what it looks like, some of our kids at Purdue playing with those blocks. Now, we did observations systematically over 4 months' time of children playing with these particular blocks. And one of the things we noted was how often they were doing these early engineering behaviors, the kinds of things that engineers do. And so this just shows the results of comparing the imagination playground, which is the big blue blocks, to two other traditional early childhood activities. One is the dramatic play area or house area, where children pretend indoors usually, and the other is the traditional playground with the slides and swings and climbers. And you can see here that there's a tremendous difference in the amount and variety of early engineering behaviors that occur with the imagination playground, big blue blocks, and in the other activities. Now, we did these observations in our laboratory school at Purdue, but also in the local Head Start program, which serves children and families in poverty. And we found very similar results in both places. In fact, there were no statistically significant differences between the rates of early engineering play in the Head Start kids and the lab school kids, most of whom are kids of professors and graduate students at the university. So interesting that this kind of play pulls out those play behaviors in both groups, and no differences between boys and girls. Now I want to say, I'm coming to the end here, I want to say just a couple things about coaching. My research has not focused a lot on professional development. We are doing a study right now within the quality rating system evaluation. That's a longitudinal study of child care providers over 2 years' time, looking at the kind of training and technical assistance they're receiving, including coaching and mentoring, and to determine, number one, what are the most effective methods of training that produce increases in quality over time. And number two, what are the different needs and different types of child care providers, and what methods of training and technical assistance work best with different types of childcare providers, because we know everybody's not the same. It's not just like with kids, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. You need to individualize, and that's one of the things that coaching can do very well, if it's used properly, is really individualized training to meet the interests and needs and current developmental level of the early childhood professional. Also, a lot of the things that we want to do with kids, we can do in the context of coaching with teachers and caregivers. I used in a couple of the slides, you noticed I used the word care teacher. That's a term that is being promoted by some authors in the United States. named Donna Whitmer and Sandy Peterson, who wrote a book about infant-toddler care and education. And I kind of like that combination of care and teacher. It's because it really brings those two things together, like we said earlier. But the processes in coaching that we want to sort of, I think we're modeling in a sense how we want teachers to work with children. You individualize, it's voluntary, it's collaborative, it's non-judgmental, it reinforces skills, supports skills, and it shows kind of how to apply things in the real world. These are all things that we kind of want to do with children as well. I do think we have some issues with coaching in the United States about how to make it possible to do coaching on a broad scale within the resources that we have. Because one-on-one, face-to-face personalized coaching is a very expensive way to do training. So I think we need to look at different approaches, and maybe you have some ideas about this. I know that this has been a focus of professional development in the Netherlands for many years, and you have some really leaders in the field in terms of video feedback training and that kind of consultation that we have learned a great deal from. But I think technologically mediated coaching, as long as it retains that individualized and personal element, some combination of face-to-face and technologically mediated, using video examples and video feedback, I think, is the way we need to go in the United States in order to really make this affordable. Finally, just to end things, I want to give you, I guess, 5 recommendations. First of all, I think this is a good time for all of us to clarify our goals for early childhood education and care. Step back for a moment out of the fray and the daily work and ask ourselves, what's really important? What are our most important goals at this point in time? They may not be the same as they were 10 or 20 years ago. The world changes, right? And our understanding of our mission also changes. Secondly, let's work even harder to prepare talented and knowledgeable early childhood care teachers. Not only in their initial preparation, but in their ongoing professional development. And let's do that in the best way that we possibly can. Let's be creative, number 3, let's be creative in thinking of ways to both prepare and sustain professionals in our field to do good work. And I think using technology in creative ways that doesn't take away the personal element is an important strategy that we'll be using. Fourth, let's refocus on the value of play and its learning potential for young children. And the challenge here is to help care teachers understand how play and learning are meshed together, and to recognize when learning is happening and to know at what point can I facilitate, can I support the learning that's going on and enrich it a bit more without taking over and directing all the child's activities. This is what early childhood should be about. And then finally, I would recommend that we all be bold. Don't be afraid to try new ideas and new methods. Don't be afraid to jump off that high dive when you see something that is looking like we ought to give it a try. Thank you.